the federal government to shift from rituals of annual budget that is actually based on allocations and expenditure to a budget that derives from planning. Nigeria is one of the few developing countries where national budgets emanate from the Federal Ministry of Finance. And I think this National Assembly is in a unique position to help Nigeria to move into a regime of planning and budgeting being put together as a function of government, and help us to move away from this arbitrary envelope system, which is the practice of the Ministry of Finance year in, year out. They give an envelope to real sectors of the economy to go and figure out what they can do with that. And I think that is responsible for the over-bloated recurrent expenditure of the federal government. I think this National Assembly should ask the federal government, what is the input of the Oronsanye report in the construction of 2013 budget? In year 2000, Mr. President, Alhaji Ahmed Joda was given a similar assignment of rationalization of public institutions that are having duplicated efforts. This report produced a white paper which till tomorrow is yet to be implemented. We now have a fresh Oronsanye report that told us that our over 600 or so parastatals are having overlapping roles, and for which they are taking annual appropriations to do exactly the same job. Mr. President, this is one area where I think this National Assembly will have helped Nigerians to solve a recurrent annual problem of spending our hard-earned resources on managing the bureaucracy of Nigeria that is not producing sufficient output that is affecting the livelihood of our people. I think going forward, the Budget Office of the National Assembly, and the Appropriation Committee should come up with guidelines that will enable the committees to work in such a way as to bringing down this overhead expenditure that is taking our resources away from servicing development into managing bureaucracy. I think this is an area where we have to do something.
Distinguished Senator Adetunmbi.
And be seen to inform the Nigerian public appropriately. There are about 4 platforms upon which this policy is predicated. And over the period of the holiday, I have the privilege of doing extensive study to find out what really is the motive behind this policy, which has generated a lot of debate. The very first one is the issue of dollarization. Can I make my argument? It's the issue of dollarization. A respected member of the economic management team of Mr. President said, and I quote, Mr. Tedro Peterside, he said, money is a store of value. All these thieves and vagabonds running around in various states and all over the country, when they steal money, they will want to keep it outside the banking system. So they need higher denominational notes. Right now, they are using the $100 notes all over Nigeria because they are the best store of values for them. If you give them a better store of value, they will move away from dollars and reduce the demand for American notes and move into our own currency as opposed to the use of dollars to hide their loot and so on. Unquote. This was Adetunmbi speaking to Nigerian media on the reason why Nigerians should support this policy of government. And here we are as a legislature, part of the ruling class that is being referred to here. That this note is meant for us, in quote, to hide loot. Let me say what I want to say. I think this is a serious issue. It is true, Mr. President, that the US dollar and the British pound is a store of value outside the United States and outside the United Kingdom. You want to store your value in a currency that is stable, that is hard, not in a naira. We need to walk naira to the level of reputation that other international currencies are enjoying now before we can position the naira to store value locally. We are also told that the equivalent of this 5,000 pounds is 5,000 naira is just about $30. So I see a contradiction here in the thinking of the economic management team to provide this note for the store of value, whether looted or unlooted. It is clearly not an argument that is plausible and that is competitive. Mr. President, the purpose, the real intention of this note is to secure large ticket transactions and to reduce the cost of currency management within the banking system. The central bank has complained that the cost of managing currency year in, year out is too much, so they are looking for bigger notes that reduces the volume of naira that they have to manage over time in order for them to reduce cost. And we are saying that if cashless economy is meant to reduce cash movement that we are told 10% of the banking customers in Nigeria that account for over 70% of cash movements, then this policy contravenes the very objective of government saying that cash should not be the most preferred means of transacting business in Nigeria. Because what the central bank is doing is giving me an opportunity to put inside my pocket about 2.5 million and I carry it around unnoticed. I think there are contradictions here. What we are seeing here between the cashless policy of government and this policy on the naira are policy contradictions. They are totally inconsistent. And the argument of Mr. Adetunmbi's side completely makes nonsense of everything that is being said about this 5,000 naira. And if we have a high-value advisor of government that is making this kind of statement, that the reason for the 5,000 naira note is for vagabonds and thieves to store loot, then it is unfortunate if this type of decision can pass through this hallowed portal that is representing Nigerians. Mr. President, on the issue of inflation, the central bank has said to us several times that theoretically there is no linkage between currency denomination and inflation. Yet, the central bank, in self-contradiction, came up and said in the Guardian newspaper advertisement, and I quote, "The experience of Nigeria and other jurisdictions suggests that currency restructuring may actually help in tackling inflation. For instance, when the CBN introduced the 500 naira notes, in 2002, inflation dropped to 16.5%. In 2003, it dropped to 12.1%. Similarly, when the 1,000 naira banknote was introduced in 2005, the inflation rate actually dropped from 11.6% to 8.6%, single digit in 2006, and dropped further to 6.6% in 2007. Mr. President, the inflation that Nigerians are worried about is the withdrawal of lower denominational notes into coins that tends to change the behavior of marketers at the retail end of the business to say, for conveniences of changing and payment, they eliminate coins and move price to the next available currency. That is the history of behavior in the marketplace in this country, and we are not sure that anything has changed that will make the contrary to be the consequence of this action. So it is not true that if currency redenomination causes inflation, but it changes the behavior in the marketplace that ends up for the consumer to pay more, especially in the retail markets, in our neighborhoods, and more transportation, and bus conductors who wants you to get off and give him the available cash as quickly as possible. On this note, I think this currency conversion, I have here, sir, data. Nigeria is not necessarily going to be the country having the highest value of banknotes in the world. The euro we are talking about is much higher in value than our 5,000 naira. But the question is, are those economies comparable? We are only having 30 naira value of currency in dollars. There are countries with $800 currency, but in the context of those economies, they are doing what is right for the economy. I am not too sure, given the pronouncements of Mr. Sanusi on cashless economy, given the pronouncement of Mr. Atedo Peterside as a motive to help corrupt movement of funds in this country, this is not a policy that this Senate should support. I so move, Mr. President.
Distinguished Senator Olubunmi,
into the state of our nation and how the minds of majority of our people operates in current situations. We have on our hands an angry nation, a people that have become virtually disconnected from their humanity. And this did not happen by choice. It happened by accumulation of years of disappointment and neglect, which has now resulted into anger and total disregard for established institutions of state to moderate in the affairs concerning them in their daily lives. We are now faced with a situation where people have become so angry that they are ready to draw blood and even celebrate death of young people. Mr. President, Nigerians are beginning to lose their humanity, not because they hate to be human beings, but the circumstances of their daily living has eroded their human emotions. In the last few weeks, I've been watching National Geographic, where you see lions hunting animals to feed. And I looked at that video. I could not distinguish between what I saw in National Geographic and what I saw on that video, where human beings were feasting on fellow human beings for reasons of perception of guilt that is not